All right. Hello, section 2. Here is our PowerPoint. I have uploaded this video, but also the actual PowerPoint. There's a few resources plugged in here, so if you want to access the actual PowerPoint, you can grab it out of the syllabus. But today we're going to be talking about using backwards design with the C3 framework and the new Iowa Social Studies standards. The great thing about this PowerPoint is that we've actually used it for some professional development in Norwalk, and so teachers are actually engaging in this work right now, so that's exciting. And so I'm going to walk through this, and there will be some times where I tell you to pause and do something on a separate sheet of paper, and I want you to bring that to class on Tuesday. You can do it by hand, or you can do it online, whichever works best for you. And that will count as your grade for attendance for Thursday. All right, so if you really quick want to watch this video, this woman is explaining how inquiry is different than other types of teaching, and just write down some thoughts that you had while you're watching. So pause the video, pause the PowerPoint and watch this video. All right, so now as we're going through this PowerPoint, you'll see on the left-hand side, backwards design is what we're going to be talking about the rest of the semester. Hopefully you've been introduced to it before, but on the right-hand side is the C3 framework that we've already learned about. And throughout the PowerPoint, you're going to see the C3 framework laid out in red, and that is going to show you how the C3 framework falls in with backwards design. So with backwards design, the first step is to identify our desired results, determine our acceptable evidence, and then plan our instruction. If you have done your PDP, this should sound very familiar because this is exactly what you did with your PDP planning. If you haven't done your PDP, do it. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, we've got the C3 framework, which first we're going to develop our questions, then we're going to apply disciplinary concepts and tools, we're going to evaluate sources and use evidence, and then we're going to communicate conclusions and take action. And then, of course, through all of this, we need to make sure that this is purposeful and powerful, which we've been talking about in class, that it has mikvah all over it. Okay, also a lot of times when we think about social studies, we think of things that are fun, things that are memorable, but we need to make sure that we're asking ourselves, is what we're doing cute or does it actually count? And if you'd like to read that article, the reference is down there below. All right, and then here's another video that you can watch. Just jot down some thoughts. This is a class actually engaging in some inquiry. So our first step, and this is for backwards design, is that we want to identify our desired results. So we need to pose a compelling question about an important issue or topic, which many of you have done for your PDP. And then you're going to develop supporting questions. So the compelling question is going to be open-ended, and the supporting questions are going to be closed-ended. There's a right or wrong answer, and they help you to work towards that compelling question. Then you're going to identify any related concepts, academic vocabulary, and skills that you want your students to know, and connect it to the standards. So we'll kind of break that down next. Okay, so this first thing that you want to do within phase 1, within coming up with your identifying of your desired results, you want to make sure that you've got some kind of topic that will be interesting and engaging to your students and hit mikvah. So that could be inspired by current events, it could be inspired by what students are interested in, or if your state or district has certain requirements about what you teach, that also might determine that. Then you're going to compose your compelling question, and remember that those compelling questions require students to take a stance. They're written in a kid-friendly way. Students can actually express them. If I were to walk into your classroom, I could ask students, what are you trying to do? And they could tell me the compelling question and what that means. And then it's actually genuinely compelling. It's not just a fake question that actually does have a real answer. It could be answered in multiple ways. Then you're going to move forward and identify the key concepts, academic vocabulary, and skills that relate to this. This could connect to social studies and any other standards for math, ELA, science, specials, etc. So basically, you're just going to sit and make a list of all the things that you find important. This can prompt your supporting questions, but students should also have a chance to generate their own questions. This may be at the beginning of the unit, this may be throughout, so that you can get more student engagement throughout. So for example, if we're going to take a look at a kindergarten theme, which for Iowa is spaces and places, or this is in Norwalk specifically, I've put here a few compelling questions that you could use. All of these are compelling questions, but they are all choices of a compelling question that one could use for a unit. Why should people live in Iowa? What should people do ensure? What should people be sure to see in Iowa? What makes Iowa a special place to live? And would you rather live in Iowa or somewhere else? Then you're going to sit down and make a huge list of all of your key concepts in the academic vocabulary. Okay, so now what I want you to do, we're going to move forward and do this part where we're going to see which standards connect. So I want you to take a look at social studies, ELA, and math at least, and find which standards in kindergarten may connect to this compelling question and these concepts in academic vocabulary. So try to find at least 2 standards for each one of those and write those down. So I'll pause this here, you pause it here too, and take some time to figure out which standards connect in ELA, math, and social studies. Great. You should be back and you should have your list of standards that you think could work with this kindergarten unit. And now you're going to brainstorm a list of supporting questions. So these have definitive answers. They need to be understood in order to answer the guiding question, and they should integrate multiple disciplines of social studies, which we talked about last week. They can be teacher-generated and student-generated. Here's our first step of our C3 framework and how it falls in with backwards design. We're working on developing our questions and planning our inquiries. That's what we've done basically so far. So again, pause this and I want you to brainstorm at least 3 or 4 supporting questions. I like to think of supporting questions as each question is going to be a lesson. So you may come up with 15 supporting questions, and they can be as simple as, if we go back to our other slide, they could be as simple as where is the Mississippi River? Or they could be as simple as, let's see, why is Iowa's soil quality better than other, or I guess this is a bit more complicated, but why is the soil quality in Iowa better than other states? Okay, so come up with at least 3 or 4 supporting questions that you think could work. All right, you're back. So we're done with phase 1, which is figuring out what our compelling question is and all that jazz. And now we're going to determine our acceptable evidence. If you've done your PDP, this is where you're doing your summative and formative assessments. So we need to think of where we're going and how we're going to show that we've gotten there before we do any planning of instruction. So we're not even thinking about the day-to-day yet. We're not thinking about activities. We're not on Pinterest trying to find stuff yet. That hasn't even crossed our mind. What we want to do is first find out what kids already know and invite them to develop some questions to help guide where we take this. And then, so that can be kind of a pre-assessment. So we know where kids are at, and that'll kind of help guide our inquiry. If all students know where Iowa is, that's probably something that we don't have to talk about throughout our unit. If none of our students know where Iowa is, that's definitely something we want to hit on. Okay, so then we're going to develop our summative assessment that provides kids the opportunity to communicate their conclusions and take action. This action can be small scale, just in the classroom, making posters to post in the classroom. It could be larger scale, going to legislature and advocating for something, depending on what your unit, where your unit takes you. Okay, so this summative assessment, hopefully you're thinking beyond tests or PowerPoint presentations and trying to come up with something that can be really motivating for students and engaging for students and hit all of MICVA. Along with your summative assessment, you also want to make sure that you have plenty of opportunities to check for understanding. That can be formative assessments. That can be what you do during class every day. It can be exit tickets, etc. Okay, so in terms of your pre-assessment, there are some really quick things you can do and in ways to figure out what students already know. And here's a list. It should take only about 5 to 10 minutes. I like to do this at the beginning of the year for each unit so that I've got plenty of time to plan for my units as I go forward. Okay, so then for your summative assessment, you want to brainstorm ways that kids can answer that compelling question. So one that I really like, especially for Iowa, because it's specific to Iowa, is having your students create a route for RAGBRAI and submit it to the Des Moines Register. There's a few other choices here too that you could do. You need to make sure that you pick one and make sure you're scaffolding any of those skills needed. So for example, when you're doing something with RAGBRAI or something with YouTube, you need to make sure that your kids feel like they can actually do those things. Okay, so you need to make sure you integrate the scaffolding of those skills throughout the unit. So I really like to use charts to kind of help make sense of my whole unit. So you can see here we've got our supporting questions that I brainstormed, and then at the very bottom I've chosen a compelling question. What makes Iowa a special place to live? And so throughout we're going to be talking about how each one of these checks for understanding or our formative assessments are going to help guide us towards this summative assessment. Okay, so that's what you would fill out in this chart. Finally, we're going to get to phase 3, which is planning our instruction. So you'll see that I've thrown in some more C3 framework pieces here. This is 3 and 4 out of the 4. So you want to make sure you get together all of your resources now that you know where you're going. You want to make sure that you're planning to differentiate because, of course, we know that we don't all have learners that are at the same level or interested in the same things. So you want to make sure that those activities allow students to apply the disciplinary concepts and tools and evaluate sources and use evidence. And so you want to make sure that all of those are connected to a supporting question. And then you want to make sure that you actually create those multiple opportunities to check for understanding. So actually develop those formative assessments. Okay, remember as we're going through and we're thinking about disciplinary thinking and tools that we've got 5 different disciplines in social studies, and we've got our purposeful and powerful social studies that we need to hit. Okay, so now what I'm going to have you do, I know that you have, I know that you have already worked on developing some supporting questions, but now I want you to really think about what grade you want to teach, and I want you to at least work through doing steps 1 and 2. So I want you to come up with a compelling question, and then I want you to come up with your disciplinary or concepts and academic vocabulary, find out which standards connect, and then I want you to determine your acceptable evidence in terms of a summative assessment. I don't need you to work towards formative assessments yet. Okay, so for Tuesday, I need to see you pick a grade that you'd like to teach. Think about, maybe use the standards to help kind of guide your thinking about what may be a requirement for the grade that you'd like to teach. And I want you, again, to come up with a compelling question. So remember, compelling questions. I want you to come up with a list of concepts and vocabulary. I want you to figure out which standards connect. This can be just 2 or 3. This is very small scale, so don't take more than 20 minutes to do this, okay? And then I want you to come up with an idea or a few ideas for your summative assessment, okay? We're going to use those on Tuesday, so make sure that you come to class with that all ready to go. We will see you then, and thank you for your understanding and being patient with me and doing this online so that we can move forward on Tuesday.